Welcome to the Arc of Massachusetts webinar series on problem solving, information, and resources. Today we're fortunate to have Deloris Joseph from the Arc of Bristol County, and Deloris is a Census Ambassador. And so the census, as you know, is ending at the end of September. It's closing. They did extend it a bit of time because of COVID. However, that's about to come to a close. And although Massachusetts has done fairly a good job, we want to make sure that anybody who has not been part of the census does have this opportunity. It doesn't take long at all, and it's so critical to the services and the supports and communities that we all live in Massachusetts. So I want to say in advance, I apologize for that annoying orange box that comes in and out, and I've been trying to figure out how to get rid of it. So after this webinar, I'm going to be talking to Zoom and trying to get rid of them for good. So anyways, so Deloris, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I have my earphones on. My son is in the background making lunch or something. I'm not sure. So as Carrie said, I am with the Arc of Bristol County, and I just wanted to give a little overview about the census. I'm quite sure everyone has heard about it. It's been talked about, and we are actually coming to the end. We're at the home stretch as far as when people can fill out the census, or when enumerators will be coming to people's homes to collect census information. So I just wanted to give some background information and why it's so important that everyone be counted and complete the census. Next slide, Carrie, please. Okay, so what is the census? So the census is done every 10 years, and it counts the populations of people in the United States and the 5 territories. It counts the number of people living in your household as of April 1st of the year of the census. And it is, wow, there it goes. And it's actually mandated, it's in the Constitution, and it's mandated that people in the United States are required by law to complete the census. I don't want to scare anyone and say by law you're going to get arrested or whatnot, but I just wanted people to know that it is part of the Constitution as far as having the census completed. Next slide, Carrie, please. All right, so how does the census affect us, and how does it affect our communities? How does it affect Massachusetts? I just wanted to get some numbers because this information is available to anybody. Sorry, my son's school's calling. So as far as the state of Massachusetts is concerned, the percentage of people who actually responded to the census, the self-report, is actually 68.6%, which is higher than the national average, which is 66%. As far as the internet, because this is the first year that the census could be done online. It's normally done in paper form, but people had the option this year to do it online. So as far as doing the online census, Massachusetts still is doing well compared to the national average at 57% as opposed to 52% of the national average. So what you're saying is, okay, we do the census, what does it mean? So what does it mean for Massachusetts? What does it mean for our communities? It brings in federal dollars. Right now, there's over $675 million in a pot that's going to be distributed throughout the different states and the territories based on the number of people living in your state. So what that means for Massachusetts is the more people that are counted, the more money that comes into our state, and actually the more money that comes into our communities for programs like school lunches, infrastructure, housing, programs in our communities, programs for people with disabilities, special education programs, hospitals, firefighters. So the money that comes into our communities is based on the number of people that complete the census. So that's why it is so important that everyone is counted. One of the stories that I wanted to share is that a few years ago, we had this humongous snowstorm. And I live in New Bedford, and we ran out of money for salt for the roads. And so I'm thinking, how does this happen? There's a budget. There should have allocated money, blah, blah, blah. So once I think about the census, I think about, okay, if we don't have people counted in these federal dollars, which are distributed, it gets distributed, but it's less money distributed because there are less people that are counted. So everybody in the household needs to be counted. And like I said, if we don't have the numbers and we don't get the federal dollars, the program still exists, but budgets are cut and then things get cut out of programs. So very, very important that we have these numbers counted. Next slide, Carrie, please. All right, and I have that box. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is either. So I've had people say, well, I'm worried about filling out the census. I'm worried that it's going to affect my immigration status, or it could be used against me in a court of law, or it may affect my housing. So the census does ask some basic information. The name of the person filling out the census, ages of people in the household, race, sex of individuals, and like I said, the number of people living in your household as of April 1st is counted. And I want to talk a little bit more about that because there was a startling number that I found out that in the last census, that over 1 million children under the ages of 5 and under were not counted on the census. More than that, as far as people with disabilities and other populations that are underserved that weren't counted. And some of the reasons that could be is that children may live in multiple households, parents may share custody, they may be living with other relatives, it could be transient, it could be homeless. There are so many reasons, but there's not really pinpointed why children 5 and under were missed, so bad in the last census. But just wanted people to realize and to understand that if you are a multi-generational household or a household that shares custody with children, that's a conversation that you need to have with the other individual as to who counts that child or those children in the home. And also, only one household member needs to fill out the census. So if you live in a multi-generational home, whoever the head of the household is fills out the census for everyone living in that house. Some things the census will not ask, and I want people to really be careful with this because there are a lot of fraud that has been going on as far as people contacting you saying they're with the census and they're gathering information. The census will never ask you for your social security number. They will never ask you for information about your banking account or your political affiliations. They won't ask you to donate any money. So if you have people calling or someone coming to your house, and we'll talk a little bit more as far as how to identify someone who is a census taker. If anyone asks you any of those questions, hang up the phone, close your door, and there's a number that you can call to report fraud, or you can call your local police department. All right, next slide, Carrie, please. All right, how to identify a census worker, because people, I know I don't answer my phone or my door for anybody. So there are different ways to identify if someone is a census worker. They should have identification, a badge that identifies them as a census worker with their picture. During the COVID, all census workers should be protected. They should be wearing a mask, face shield, or some other protective gear over their face, and they should be practicing social distancing. They do work between the hours of 9 and 9 p.m., so you could have someone come to your home in the morning or in the evening. Don't be alarmed if that does happen. They are actually going out to homes now for people who have not completed their forms by mail, by phone, or online. So if you have completed it with one of those measures, you shouldn't really have anyone coming to your home. If they do, they need to be able to identify themselves. If they don't have any of the information that I just listed, please do not give them any information. You can call the number that's listed on this side to say, hey, this person came out to the home, give them some information, and they could verify if this is actually a census worker. If you have someone that comes out to your home who doesn't speak your language, they will leave and actually send someone back to your home that actually speaks your language. The census is in multiple languages, and I think one of my slides is going to have the information as far as if you have questions or if English is not your first language, then there are other avenues that you can use to complete the census. like Carrie said earlier, we're down to the wire. They were looking to try to extend it. I think it was in Congress and maybe try to extend it to October. As of now, we have not heard that it's been extended. So September 30th is the date that we're still looking at. So you have up until September 30th to complete your census. You can actually still do it online if you want. You can mail it in or you can do it by phone. So even though there are enumerators who are out in communities knocking on doors, gathering census information, you still have those options available to you to complete the census. All right. Next slide, Carrie, please. All right. As I said, there are many options to complete the census. There is a number that's on the slide too, and I know Carrie's going to make this information available. If you want to complete the census by phone, there's a number that you can dial for English. I also listed the website too because there are censuses in multiple languages, and I didn't want to list all of the phone numbers on the slide. So you are more than welcome to go to the website listed. And when you go to the website, it has a listing of different phone numbers for different languages. So when you call, there should be someone who answers that speaks that language. You still have time to do your census online. I know I did my census online and it came with a code. So if you lost your paper and you don't have your code, you can still go online and it will prompt you as to, excuse me, it will prompt you as to what to do to get a code so that you're able to do your census online. And as always, you can still mail it in if you so choose to. Also, the census, there are certain tools for people with disabilities to help them complete the census. And I have listed the phone number here. And also you can go to the census website to gather more information. Like I said, everyone counts. And I think people get confused and are afraid to complete the census because of immigration status, because of maybe different people living in their households. They're afraid of housing, afraid that this information will be used against them in a court of law or with the federal agencies. Please know that census information is private and confidential. Census information is held that way for over 70 years. Census are not released until after 70 years. So one of the examples that I like to use is that people now are doing like ancestry.com or genealogy searches, trying to find their family heritage and their roots. And you're able to look at old census records. It's because the time period has expired for that information to be held private and confidential. So the census that we are doing now in 2020 will not be made available to the public for 70 years. So I want people to rest assured that the police are not going to come knocking on your door. Your landlord is not going to come to say that they got information that you have multiple people living in your home. And I think that's some of the fear of people. Also, are hard to count populations, especially young people and communities of color are sometimes hesitant about completing the census. So that's where we're hitting the ground hard right now. The enumerators are out in definitely those hard to hit communities, trying to reach people, trying to count our homeless population. Like I said, everybody counts. There are certain enumerators who are out in the community who are getting the information for our homeless populations, for our residential populations, our schools, colleges. I know things look a little different than we thought they were going to look at the beginning of the year, but there are still some campuses who have students on campus. So there are specific enumerators who are going to schools, who are going to institutions to make sure that everyone is counted. And like I said, we're doing pretty good in Massachusetts. We're not the best. We're like in the middle of the road as far as how many people that have been enumerated in Massachusetts. We're at 96.8%, which is a good number. If you're in school, that's an A, right? So we're still in a good spot. We're ranked 22 out of all of the 50 states. And I was just telling Carrie earlier that the state of Idaho almost has 100% completion rate as far as every individual in that state being enumerated at like 99.8%. So we still have a ways to go. If you have completed your census and you know that someone may not have, or just some talking points for people, I was telling Carrie that it would be good for people if you're in your communities, if you're with your families, to have these conversations. We can't force anyone to complete the census, but I think just telling people how important it is just for your communities, just for the state of Massachusetts, as far as money and fundings for programs that we value and that are so already underfunded. So the more people that we get counted, the better. And the last census, we ended up losing one person from the House of Representatives, from person from Congress, that we lost a seat because of our numbers. So we want our voices to count. We want our voices to count on a federal level also. So we don't want to lose any more seats. We don't want to be undercounted or underrepresented. So anything that we can do to get this last push to encourage people. And also one other thing too, I wanted to say that if someone is not sure how to fill it out, you can get help filling out the census. If you have questions, you can always call the enumerators when they come out to your home. I had a friend tell me that she totally forgot to do her census, and she just walking her dog and she saw the enumerator, and it only took a few minutes for them to do it because they have their iPads and equipments with them. If you're with a friend or family member and they say, well, I didn't do it, can I do it now? If they have a cell phone or any other iPad or device with them, they can log on at any time in any of those devices to have the census completed. So I think I hit all the high points. Kathleen is here. If I didn't hit high points, I wanted to make sure. I think people have been hearing about it a lot, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I wanted to try to make it personal as far as how it looks for Massachusetts, how it looks for our communities. And the more money we get, the more things that we can have in our communities. Oh, someone just in the chat.
So we got a couple of chats here. So Kathleen, thank you, Kathleen. But there's a hearing today actually regarding the possible extension, which we can all, cross our fingers. I'm wondering. I mean, I have a question. Do we know the difference between 10 years ago, the response rate, and in this year? Is it? I'm just curious.
We, in terms of Massachusetts,
Yeah,
we are just skating self-response rate. We're skating right below where we were in 2010. We're just about there, but there's been really good. Deloris probably also, knows that there's been good follow-up. We're up there. We're doing well in Massachusetts, as Deloris said, with the follow-up.
So I see, thanks, Kathleen. So I see that Paul has a question. A census taker knocked on our door to ask about the neighbors because they did not answer the door. Is that allowed?
Okay. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question to ask about, and maybe I don't know exactly what they asked about the neighbor. Did they ask if someone's still living there? I don't know if they were asking specific questions. I'm not sure. I think I would need to know a little bit more can you put yourself off mute, Paul, please?
Yeah, I would think that if they were asking actual census questions, that would be illegal.
It is. That's what it looks like. Paul said age, number, sex. There. Yes. So.
Yeah.
No, they can't. No, they shouldn't be asking that. I thought they were asking like, do you know if people still live there? That type of question. But they shouldn't be asking you specific information about your neighbors. No. So I'm wondering if that was. Do you know if they had any identification on them, Paul, that identified them as a census taker, or they shouldn't
Paul
be asking those questions,
have,
period.
Audio, so
oh, okay. They shouldn't be asking those questions.
He'll be chatting in.
Okay, so they shouldn't. So the answer to that, no, they shouldn't be asking those questions, Paul.
Yeah, and it might be a type of situation too where you want to call the census about them because that's not a good practice.
Exactly. Hold on. Let's see. Ask number.
Yeah, they said. He's saying that they did have a badge and lanyard, but
I would reach out.
Yeah, I would as well. They shouldn't be asking specific questions as it's not your household and some privacy,
Oh, definitely some privacy issues. And also too, I mentioned this in my last presentation. I didn't say it here. there's also the US Census. This is what we're talking about now, but there are also cities and towns. They have their own census that they do, surveys, I'm sorry, that they do, and they ask specific questions. They may ask, if someone's asked me, do you count pets on the census? Not on the US Census, but maybe in your town or your city when they're doing their own survey like census, they may ask you about pets in your home or certain or other questions that the US Census won't ask. So I know I had a friend who actually did her US Census and actually got a survey in the mail from her city that asked some specific questions. So I think some people were confused thinking that that was the census, and it's actually just a survey that a lot of towns and communities, towns and cities do to gather information about the citizens in their area.
Yeah.
So that may happen. Also, too, there may be people doing follow-up. So you may have completed your census, and for whatever reason, there may be some information that was missing or misunderstood. So you may have a census worker do a follow-up with you, or may ask you some additional questions about certain things. So that is not unusual. But when that does happen, you are notified in advance that someone would be following up.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
How about any other questions? I mean, feel free to unmute yourself to ask the question as well.
Yeah. Kathleen and I would do our best.
I'm just curious. I got a question for everybody. Who has completed the census? You can raise your hand. You can.
All right, Paul. Yeah.
Let's see. How many hands do I see raised? I don't see many hands raised. Or you could chat in and just say yes.
And I hope that this alleviated, if you haven't, for whatever reason, I hope that, some of the things that, we've talked about have alleviated some of your fears or giving you a better understanding of why it is so important to have everyone counted, because it does come down to money, federal dollars, and everyone can use money. Our schools, our communities, programs, we all can use the money. So the more we're counted, the more dollars comes into Massachusetts. And as far as communities, I didn't want to do, because there's a map. If you go to 2020census.gov, they have so many things on that site. If you're just curious to see, well, how's the response rate, in my city, in my county, as opposed to, other counties in Massachusetts. It even so specific, it talks about neighborhoods, like percentage of people who've been counted in neighborhoods and what neighborhoods are right now undercounted. So it gets that specific if you're, if you have time and you want to do that, just to see how your community is doing, you can do that. But overall, we're, just like Kathleen said, we're kind of hovering where we were 10 years ago. I just don't want us to lose another seat. I just don't want us to lose somebody else in Congress. That could be very scary. And I'm going to tell you, if you live in Rhode Island and you have friends or family in Rhode Island, please encourage them, because they are in serious jeopardy of losing and going down to 2. They have 3 now. They are in serious jeopardy.
Wow.
So.
Oh, okay. Well, you have motivated me to do one final outreach to my social media accounts, just to make sure that everybody says, everybody's doing it. So, well, thank you, Deloris, and thank you, Kathleen, for, sharing some really great information. Thanks for your work and your outreach, and thank you to all who joined today. You'll get a copy of the presentation after this webinar today. So I hope everybody has a great day, and take care.
Yep.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Great job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kathleen. Oh, let me get off. Where am I?